Welcome to Rainier Avenue Radio App. More than a day. As a matter of fact, we were on day 4.
On day 4.
Oh, boy, Charlie. We're getting close to the end now with another phenomenal day, another incredible day of panels discussing environmental justice.
It was. We had a good one yesterday. We kicked it off starting online, and then we went all in person right after that. It was really nice to have people in the space.
And the reason we were online is because we were streaming from Yakima, or actually the Tri-Cities.
Mm-hmm.
The Tri-Cities, Kennewick, Pasco. Which one am I leaving out? Kennewick, Pasco, Richland. The Tri-Cities and Women of Wisdom did an incredible panel discussion on sustainable solutions for the environment in Eastern Washington, and they have a few different challenges that we do.
Mm-hmm. It was really nice to get a perspective from a different side of the state where there's different geography, a much drier climate over there.
Yeah. And we don't have a nuclear facility that produces nuclear waste in Western Washington.
Yeah, the concept or the just talking point of Hanford came up a couple times.
Yeah. It
came up also in the Urban League discussion as well.
Okay. And the Urban League session followed the Women of Wisdom, right?
Yeah, I thought the Urban League discussion was one of the best and one of the most informal ones we had. It seemed like Nick and Camille, both from the Urban League, both were organizers of Black Earth Day, which was an amazing event. Didn't really seem to come with a script, but that was to their credit and to their benefit. I thought they did better without it. I mean, Nick can just... he could do an hour of pop culture references, and I think we'd all be okay with it.
The script was their passion and energy for environmental justice. Boy, incredible. And well, you know what? Since we're talking about yesterday, go ahead, keep going, Charlie.
Yeah. Transit Riders Union was an incredible discussion. I think there was a lot of different unique perspectives there. I'm glad they brought different people that represented different parts. So we had someone with the Disability Mobility Initiative. We had someone with pedestrian rights. Just kind of, I think they did a good job of encompassing all the different types and walks of people that use public transportation and walk more than they drive. Yeah, it was very anti-car, which I think was a good thing.
Yeah, and then communities and clean water, a conversation that was led by Mary Rayborn, Communications at King County Stormwater Services, and Parker Linus, Next Gen intern. I thought he did a phenomenal job.
I did too. One thing that I really liked, I was so glad they had William Herbert up there. I think the conversation of how do people get into this space was something that was touched on when Quest was here, and Kathleen. But I thought William did a great job of saying, your application doesn't just go through a machine. Like, there are real people that sit down and look at the passion that people have for this work, which made me feel so much more comfortable about who in our city government is determining these things, because it's people with passion, and it's people with passion deciding who has the passion.
Earth deserves more than a day. Day 4. I'd like to thank our sponsor, King County Parks. Let's quickly run through this, Charlie, as we have our American Lung Association show coming up. So that's at noon, or that's at in a couple minutes, actually.
Yeah, 11 a.m. to noon is the American Lung Association. That is followed by noon to 1, Winds of Change with Kim Kamara, who was here for our What is Environmental Justice panel, and had a lot to say. I'm very excited to have her back.
And so they're going to be talking about local eco-cultural systems, barriers, and access. And then we're going to be coming to you, we're bringing to you from the Fijian Islands, I believe, South Pacific Islands, a webinar that's entitled Reflections, Sustaining Our Island, Reflections on Shared Responsibility. So that is going to be unique and pretty powerful, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I think that's going to encompass sort of a more global perspective on what we've been talking about for 3 days now. And after that, we have the Executive Climate Equity Team talking about green jobs, Climate Equity Task Force, and the climate preparedness effort at King County,
All
which
right.
I think will be a great summarization of the other King County panels that we've been having.
Yes. Big day today. Thank you for joining us. Wake up, wake up, wake up. We're here. Things are about to get started. We'll be having our American Lung Association panel start in about 2 minutes on behalf of Charlie Darnell. It's me, Tony B, and thank you for listening. We'll be back in about 2 minutes.
Your community radio station will provide you with more information. Rainier Avenue Radio.
We are strong, we are resilient, and we will get through this together. But these are stressful times, and it's important to also practice good self-care. It's normal to feel overwhelmed, anxious, or afraid, but there is hope. Reach out to someone, connect with your friends, stay in touch with your community, and know that you are not alone.
Hello, I'm Tony Young, and every week I will be your guide to the music of the Fab Four with my show, With the Beatles. John Lennon, Paul McCartney, George Harrison, and Ringo Starr, those four lads from Liverpool. First airings are Tuesday night from 7 to 9 p.m., with repeats on Thursdays and Saturdays from 8 to 10 a.m., right here on Rainier Avenue Radio. Tune in to catch Beatlemania.
Women Empowerment Talk Radio, your roadmap to business success. Tune in every Sunday at 3 p.m. on Rainier Avenue Radio.world, providing resources and sharing motivational experiences from the everyday entrepreneur. Tune in Women Empowerment Talk Radio every Sunday, 3 p.m. on Rainier Avenue Radio.world.
Wash your hands, don't touch your face, wipe things down, clean up your space. When you cough and sneeze, do responsibly. If you feel you're getting ill, isolate at home and chill. No, you're not alone. Please pick up your phone and call 206-477-3977. King County 206-477-3977. Public Health 206-477-3977. King County 206-477-3977. Public Community Radio Station will provide you with more information. Say Rainier Avenue Radio. Your community radio station will provide you with more information. Rainier Avenue Radio.
This is Paul Pearson, host of Star Time. And when I'm not stopping a Mercer Island street brawl, I'm listening to Rainier Avenue Radio.world.
Been around for a long, long
uh, somehow I'm getting muted. Um, hmm. Let me make sure I got this. All right. All right. Let's get started. I got the technical issues dealt with. Hey, every time you do something like this, there's always a technical aspect, and I was not born with the knowledge of technical knowledge that you're supposed to have. But, anyways, I really want to thank everyone for tuning in and listening in on this fourth day of us commemorating and celebrating Earth deserves more than a day. And I have two very special guests. Uh, yeah, thank you for not giving me the music back there. But I have Susan Oltmann, Executive Director of the American Lung Association, and a colleague of hers, Carrie Neeson, and hope I pronounced that right, who's also involved, and she is the Senior Director of Advocacy. But before we get started, I want to give you a little bit of background. Let's go back, way back. In 1904, Dr. Edward Livingston Trudeau established what is called then the National Association for the Study and Prevention of Tuberculosis, the NASPT. That's a mouthful. In hopes of combating the Great White Plague. Now, the Great White Plague was the term that they used because the paleness that was associated with individuals who suffered from tuberculosis. The patients were pale and ghostly pale. Then later in 1918, the NASPT, that was the National Association for the Study and Prevention of Tuberculosis, was renamed the National Tuberculosis Association, NTA, and it continued to fight against lung diseases, they expanded beyond tuberculosis. And the organization went through another transformation, this time in the 70s, early 70s. In 1973, it became the American Lung Association. And it reflected, and it was based upon the fact that tuberculosis in this country had waned and was really on its way out, except now we know that there has been a resurgence of tuberculosis, but that's another story. That's another program for another day. But the American Lung Association reflects the broader focus on lung diseases, deals with health education, support programs, services, all these kinds of things, anti-smoking, air quality stuff. So, in honor of our Earth deserves more than a day, we know that one of the environments that's being degraded, but then has been degraded, is our quality of air. And what most disturbing is, based on the research, and I'm not a research scientist, but I can read. We know that there's been a body of research all around the world, but in particular, focusing on the situation involving individuals and inhabitants who live in large urban centers. I would say this. You can check me on this. But when we were in a totally agrarian society, living on the farms, living on the ranches, I believe that things like asthma and things like that associated with respiratory issues were not a factor. I think it's pretty evident. It's pretty evident that when we moved and we advanced as a society to move from an agrarian society into an urban setting, Gesellschaft statement, those of you who study sociology, there's a whole different situation involving individuals living in the city. We went from an extended family. That meant a large number of people in the family, with grandma, grandpa, aunts, uncles, cousins, living together, working on the farm to produce, or ranches to produce crops and animal, things like that, herds of animals. When we moved from that agrarian society into an urban setting, we became what was called the family shrunk to a nuclear family. And that was predicated on mom and dad and maybe children, but not much more than that because of the situation involving living in an urban setting, this lack of space, the crowding, all of that. But then when you think about it, we talk about what was the advent of this thing called urban asthma. And we're going to be talking about that. But I really want to just begin by saying thank you very much, Susan. And uh, Cassie, Carrie. I mean, excuse me. I don't know why I have Cassie on my name, but Carrie and Season, please come on in and let's get going on this one. Thank you very much for letting me slip and slide on that intro. Man, I'm really so happy to have you here. So, Season and uh, Carrie, I haven't met you before, but thank you, and I appreciate your coming. Um, so I really want to begin by just letting you both introduce yourselves. I did a little bit of Cassie. Here I go again.
I'm
Carrie.
fine with Cassidy. I think that sounds kind of cool. I can be Cassidy for today, John.
No, I'm the host. I had to be at least 50% accurate. Carrie, yeah, was that world famous movie too. So, well, I don't know why it would misconnect that. But let me start with Season, if you don't mind, Carrie. Now, Season, I know you've been a director. Well, gosh, several years now, going on close to a decade now, right? At the American Lung Association, correct?
Thank you so much for having us back, John. It's great
Yeah.
to be here, and what a great platform. What a great topic to about this week.
Well, thank you. But about you, yeah, I had you on earlier, and I think Molly was also on that discussion. And when you got involved working in this, and I know you went to school down in Oregon, Willamette. Was it the Willamette Bears? Was it the
Bearcats?
Bearcats, right? Bearcats. Willamette Bearcats, and they fought against the Linfield Wildcats or whatever, because Linfield was.
John's done his research.
Well, the reason why I almost went to Linfield because they were rated #1 small college football, and I was at Garfield, and I said, "Oh, gee, that'd be great." There was a connection, but that's not that's back then. So, in your involvement, you also worked for the Cancer Society. Is that correct?
That's it. I've been a nonprofit for a couple decades.
Yeah, but all and related to health and things like that. That's wonderful. I don't want to get too personal, but what brought you to Seattle?
Yeah, post college and want to move to the big city, and moved here and did got married and had the kids, like the whole American dream. But it's been really beautiful to work in nonprofit in Seattle. It's such a rich research base here, so it's so amazing to fundraise here, where we are spending our funding dollars on research, and this community is just highly philanthropic, and so it's just wonderful to be able to support oncology patients from the American Cancer Society. And then, I feel like I still kept oncology relationships because obviously at the American Lung Association, we're defeating lung cancer, in addition to supporting those patients and family living with lung disease. We're looking to eliminate tobacco use, and that includes vaping. We'd love to talk to you about that a little bit. And obviously tobacco-related diseases. You mentioned emphysema earlier, COPD, obviously some lung cancer in there as well. And then air quality. And I think that's really where I'm excited to introduce Carrie and the work that she's doing. And I think that, this platform talking about Earth Day and environmental concerns really ties, very closely with what we're doing with the American Lung Association around air quality.
That's great. Now, Carrie, is it Nissen or Nissen?
It's Nissen. You had it right the very first time, John.
Well, let's give me an A for the day. Okay. But okay, Carrie. Now, so you're I see your position. You're what's called the Senior Director of Advocacy. That's intriguing. Advocacy. A lot of people say, "Yeah, you're my advocate." In other words, you represent me. But what is it? Well, first of all, Carrie, thank you for coming on. It was my first time getting to meet you. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, like where you from, where you grew up, etc.?
You bet. Well, I really kind of enjoyed the intro because actually I'm a farm girl, John. I grew up in Eastern Washington, and I went to school in the small little town with about 800 people, Lind, Washington.
I know where Lind is, yes.
You do? Have you been
Well,
there?
Lynn Cooley, right there, Potholes Reservoir, Othello. Yes. Anyway.
Here, I thought I could stump you, and no, you know exactly where I'm from. So I grew up on a dryland wheat farm, and we still have that land today. So I'm still managing that for the family.
Great.
And when I was about 7 years old, my dad was a big sports fan. And so we were watching a college basketball game. And one of the teams that was playing was wearing purple and gold. And I said, dang, I love those colors. I think I'm going to go to college there. So, a decade or so later, I did go to the University of Washington. And my hand's kind of arthritic, so I always have to kind of like help my fingers do that.
No, that's great. You did. That's great. I'm a Husky too as well. But
so I went there and I graduated, and I've had a couple of different jobs, and I, like Season, have been in the nonprofit sector for many decades, and I found my forever home, if you will, at the Lung Association for lots of different reasons.
Well, that's great because, again, I'm from Chicago originally and moved to Seattle. Seattle is not the same kind of setting as Chicago was. But when I looked into the intriguing part was a couple of years ago, I looked at this thing called urban asthma, the impact of urban asthma on inhabitants of the inner city, especially children. And wow, the body of information is really rich, but it's also very disheartening because it's not diminished. It's actually grown. And so that's why I think it's just appropriate. Not only do you deal with those kinds of issues, you deal with a whole bunch of things. That's why you are the American Lung Association, not Tuberculosis Society, because that's, again, fortunately, it kind of tapered down tuberculosis in this country, but then it kind of emerged and kind of is growing back up. But anyways, let's get into this. So what is it that, American Lung Association, that kind of tells me what you do. But give me the whole, 9 yards of what American Lung Association does for our community,
So
Please.
you started with asthma, so I'm going to start there. Upwards of 20% of school-aged children have asthma. So if you think about a classroom that has, on any given day, 20% of their children not present because of asthma exacerbations, and 20% of those kids that have trouble participating in PE and have trouble participating in after-school sports. Some of them have exacerbations because of the biology lab. So these, if just from a day-to-day perspective, when you're talking about access to quality education, access to, really the ongoing affordable and adequate healthcare, that's a massive amount of our children that are being affected by this disease. And in addition, we're seeing children that are playing sports that are then having asthma-related episodes brought on by sports or brought on by athletics. So, we know that the lungs are the only organ that is exposed to the environment.
Right.
So it affects every single person. So when we are doing work like Carrie does, both locally and our team nationally, federally, on policy and legislation around what air quality looks like, we're doing those things every day. When we are helping school nurses identify an asthma exacerbation is the word I'm using, but when we're helping school nurses or teachers when they don't have a school nurse, because we know many public schools don't have that kind of resource. That is, just helping kiddos stay healthy, but also, stay in the classroom, stay in an educational environment. Other things that we're doing on an everyday basis, and I'm going to really lean into this school environment here. We know that in Washington, upwards of 15% of middle schoolers say that they've used a vape pen in the last 30 days.
Wow.
So we know that this is an epidemic, and this was an epidemic before the COVID-19 pandemic. We saw a little bit of dip because all these kids were home. But now we're seeing all of those rates again. So we really need to support parents in what do they need to look for. I have a middle schooler. I have a high schooler. My daughter, when we passed by somebody with a vape cloud and I asked her, what is that? She said, oh, that's a breath freshener. And I said, that is not. That is not. Really? So we need to support parents. And what does that look like? What do the vape pens look like now? They smell like bubblegum and mint and candy. It's not the typical cigarette and cigar smell that I grew up with, right? We need to support our campuses. So we've done a really great job about making tobacco-free campuses. But again, how do we keep these kiddos in the school room, in the classroom? So a kiddo makes a mistake. They're using a vape pen. They find it on campus. Now, all of a sudden, that student is suspended or sometimes expelled if it's like a multi-term situation and discipline. So now these kiddos are out of the education environment. They're out of supervision. That just doesn't make sense, right? So we're doing, we've got great programs that are supporting schools with the youth prevention and cessation situation. So we've got a program called In Depth where we can support a staff or a faculty on campus where they are facilitating a mandatory training for youth that's been caught with tobacco so that they understand the impact of what nicotine is doing on their body. Okay, so this is a mandatory program. It's an alternative to suspension. They're not out of the campus environment. They're not leaving an educational classroom, but we're giving them more information. We're giving them more tools. And then the secondary kind of follow-up program that we have is not on tobacco. So we know that youth tobacco prevention and cessation is really specific. Nicotine replacement therapy is not FDA regulated for minors. So we know that we have to support these kiddos in a highly addictive substance that nicotine is. And so we provide them with, again, a facilitator, a faculty administrator on a campus with facilitator training for not on tobacco, which is not a mandatory program. It's an elected program of kiddos that want to stop their nicotine addiction, and we're helping them in tools on how to do that. So those are a couple of things that we're doing specifically in the schools, John.
That's there was that big push to curb smoking by youngsters, children, and now along comes this thing called vaping. And I used to hear stories, well, I smoke weed because that's not as bad as tobacco. Well, guess what? You're still doing it, and you're still sucking it into your lungs. Your lungs, you only get. Actually, there have been transplants and things like that, but our body, we can't live without our lungs. We translate oxygen, convert it into carbon dioxide. We exhale that, but every one of our organs needs oxygen, blood, and everything. So. That's about all I know about biology and physiology, ladies, and anatomy, ladies and gentlemen. So that's about it for right now, because I didn't pay attention a lot in biology. Yeah, I did, but it was a lot of fun. However, when you sit at home and they talk about not smoking, and both your parents are smoking, and your aunts and your uncles and everybody in your family smokes, it's very hard. I smoked. I quit, but I smoked. And it was because, but I started in college, which doesn't make any sense. You go to school to get college to get an education, and I started smoking. And yeah, that's another story. So Carrie, when you talk about your role and the role of the American Lung Association, man, this is almost like, can you see the horizon? Can you see the end of the tunnel, the light at the end of the tunnel? This almost seems like it's a, like I said, it doesn't seem like there's going to be any real answer, because each generation seems to find a way to, mess with their physiology, I mean, all these things. I guess the best way to describe it is we always find vices for our body, which our body absorbs, and smoking, vaping is one of them. Drinking, of course, and all that. So what would your role be, and how do you approach this? Because it's an epidemic to me.
It is hard, John, and I have to say, I just have to have a little hope.
Yeah.
And I'm going to tell a little story about my dad that gave me a little bit of hope when I was a kid. Dad was a lifelong smoker. He started smoking when he was in the Army. He had a buddy who gave him a cigarette. Dad tried it, said, "This thing tastes terrible." Then he had another buddy come along and give him another cigarette, and this one was a menthol cigarette. And Dad smoked that cigarette, and he said, "Gosh, this kind of tastes good." And he took another, I don't know what you call it, another
drag.
Thank you, drag off the cigarette, and he was able to inhale it deeply, and it was soothing, and it tasted good. And he was addicted for years.
Wow.
Decades. So when I went to school, I started learning about how bad tobacco is for you, right? How bad smoking is for you. So I would come home and I would say, "Dad, I really don't want you to die. Smoking's not very good for you. I think you should quit." Well, I told you my dad was a farmer in Eastern Washington on dryland ground. Not an easy way to make a living. And he was kind of gruff and stern. And he said something like, "If I want to kill myself, it's my own business." So, which no child wants to ever hear, right? So I was horrified, but I knew that was like a code word for Carrie, quit talking to me about this. So move years ahead, John. It was March 5th, 1995, and Dad was out in the field, and he was farming. When he came in, he took a shower like he always did every night, and he sat in his favorite recliner and sat down to watch the news. And on the news that night, they had results of a new study that showed that infants exposed to secondhand smoke were more likely to die from sudden infant death syndrome.
Wow.
My sister at the time was pregnant with her first child. And when Dad heard that news and understand the effect that his smoking could have on his grandchild, he threw the cigarettes away and never smoked again.
Oh, good for him.
So the lesson that I took from that, from my very gruff father who ignored all the advice that I had as a very wise 8-year-old to quit smoking, years later, he had additional information and he made that decision for himself to quit smoking.
Oh, that's great.
So education can make a difference. The role that advocacy has in that is really to affect public policy. It's one thing if we can get one person to quit smoking or one person to not be exposed to secondhand smoke at work. But in Washington State, when we were able to pass Initiative 901, which made all workplaces smoke-free, the impact that you can have doing work like that is work worth doing. And that's what we do at the American Lung Association.
Thank you. We're going to take a real quick break. I forgot to tell you that Carrie and Susan, we're going to take a real short break. We're going to come back. We're going to talk about that again. I want to continue because there's a couple of things that I'm aware of. Hey, you're listening to Seattle Here Now on Earth Deserves More Than a Day programming. We have special guests, Susan Oltmann and Carrie Nyson, and we will be right back. They represent the American Lung Association. Folks, stay tuned.
I'm Paul Pearson, host of Star Time, and when I'm not rehearsing my annual address to shareholders, I'm listening to Rainier Avenue Radio World.
Generational wealth. Generational wealth. Generational wealth. What is generational wealth? We asked our communities, and this is what they had to say.
Generational wealth to me is wealth that has been accumulated from their ancestors, but their ancestors are usually the ones that aren't the ones that built it, but built off of POC ancestors, in my own definition, from what I see. Because not many POC people have that type of wealth, as you can see in many people's neighborhoods and communities. It's usually a white person. You can see it in gentrification around us and even in schools nowadays. But generational wealth is basically hard work that isn't really your own hard work.
This campaign to create awareness to generational wealth is brought to you by the Department of Neighborhood's Generational Wealth Initiative, the Washington Housing Finance Commission, and Rainier Avenue Radio.world.
On Rainier Avenue Radio.world, look for the Change Your Food, Change Your Life show. I'm Dennis Weaver, your good food guide and host, helping you to feel good and look good, and who wouldn't want some of that? All that and more from the Change Your Food, Change Your Life show on Rainier Avenue Radio.world. Stories, songs, and get. Begin living the organic good food life, and the rest of your life just may be the best of your life. Always up, baby, to your health.
Hello, listener. What's important to you about what's going on in your community? Are you interested? Are you concerned? In any case, I invite you to tune into my show, Seattle Here and Now, on Rainier Avenue Radio.world. Why? I will be covering a wide range of topics important to you and impacting the community. Each show will have a special guest or guests to share with you information on a variety of subjects that are happening here and now in Seattle. I promise I will work hard to make my show informative, interesting, and entertaining. Be sure to listen to Seattle Here and Now on Rainier Avenue Radio.world.
Did you know that there's an updated COVID-19 booster that protects you even more than the original vaccines? Even if you got the first vaccinations, now it's time to get this new updated booster shot. It's especially important for adults 50 and over and people with a compromised immune system. Even though you may not hear about catching COVID as often, each week in King County, some people even end up in the hospital because of it. So check with your loved ones and make sure they've gotten an updated booster. For more information on where to get a COVID vaccine, including free vaccination resources, visit kingcounty.gov/vaccines. kingcounty.gov/vaccines. Here with the Rainier Avenue Radio Traffic Update. You can listen to us in your car 24/7 anytime by downloading the free TuneIn app. Once you do, search Rainier Avenue Radio. And remember, do not curse out your fellow drivers. This has been your Rainier Avenue Radio Traffic Update.
We are back. Thank you very much, Daniel. Daniel is our guy. We want to continue where we left off with Carrie and my special guest, Susan Oltmann, director of the executive director of American Lung Association Seattle, and Carrie Nyssen. Carrie Nyssen, who is a senior member of the staff. She's also the advocacy director, or senior director of advocacy for the American Lung Association. So come on back. Let's really, Carrie, what you talk about is really, really heartfelt. I appreciate that. It's when you put a personal spin to it, it means a lot to folks. Those commercials are very hard to watch and brutal, but these individuals are suffering from cancer, etc., because of smoking. It's hard, but it is a true story. It impacts you. And so thank you for sharing, Carrie. That was really beautiful. And one of the reasons why I'm, like I said, I'm no champion for, I guess you could say we're all champions for the environment, because this is the only environment we have, ladies and gentlemen, our air, our water, our land. But when I looked at the issue of urban asthma and the effects, I was just, like I said, overwhelmed. I mean, I was reading some studies. They did a massive study in France. They did this writing by D'Amato was talking about the issue of children's asthma and allergies are exacerbated or created because of air pollution. And the study said, well, it's not so much industrial now pollution, it's vehicle pollution, air pollution because of vehicles. And I'll just share with you, in Atlanta, they have a bus garage right next to a low income housing project. And the reason why I have to mention low income housing project, when they fire up those buses, there were 200 and plus buses, early morning, you could see this cloud because these are diesel and gasoline, they're not electric. This was a few years ago. You could see this big cloud vapor going in when the wind is blowing that way into that community. And these kids are getting out of the, coming in, eating breakfast, going out the door to get ready to go to school. And I said to the superintendent, I says, why are you firing all the buses up at the same time? Why don't you stagger the starters? 5 minutes, 2, 3 minutes, it's not going to make that big of a difference. It'll allow for the air, hopefully, to dissipate that big cloud. And they didn't even think about it. And one of the problems is, it's a low income housing project, or they just lucky to have a home and all that. And that's part of the problem too. Communities of low income, underrepresented communities of color have taken the brunt of all of this toxic waste. Even here in Seattle, they're flushing down water contaminants into our water system, into our sewer. Their machines that they run are diesel and gas, and they're spewing out as they work in our neighborhood to build a road or highway and stuff. And it's just, again, it's unfortunate that the individuals, low income, and people of color have very little voice. It's unfortunate. But again, one of the things that the studies have shown that, along with the air pollution, certain lifestyles. If you're around a lot of people who smoke, you're exposed to that. If you're also living in a city that has a lot of other stress factors too, crowding, living in conditions of substandard housing, poor ventilation, all of these things affect it. So, anyways, like I said, I'm not an expert, but I'm just amazed. I got just pages of stuff that I see, and I'm saying I cannot believe it. And then they give you, and I saw some formulas in there, what they're talking about: pollutants, particles, sulfur dioxide, and they call this the particles with an aerodynamic diameter of 10 or less than whatever. And I said nitrogen dioxide, and I said, oh my gosh, I wish I could have spent more time in chemistry class. But these are people. See, this is the thing: the body of research is saying there is an impact to our environment. There's an impact to our daily lives. And that's why I appreciate the work that the American Lung Association does. You're advocates, but you're also policy directed. You beat on the doors and you talk about people who make the laws and develop, what is policy. And I think that's important. So the initiatives regarding smoking, I saw something that said they're going to ban menthol or mentholated smoking, because when I first took a whiff of my dad's Camel cigarette, man, that just was so, we call those chest busters. It was so harsh. I mean, yeah, Camels, unfiltered. And then I said, well, then someone gave me a Cool, which was a little bit strong. Then someone gave me a Salem. I'm not mentioning anything and endorsing any product, but that was my cigarette, Salem's menthol. I could smoke a pack a day, almost a pack and a half a day. Fortunately, I quit though. But I know that that's part of the. What are some of the legislative issues that American Lung Association is involved in or knowledge about that we can support in your efforts? And I'm asking you, what can we do to help you do what you do for us?
Oh, that's a great question, John. And my dad also smoked Salem. So isn't that something? I want to talk a little bit about the lungs for a second. Mm-hmm. If we took our lungs and we spread them out, the surface area, the whole lung was just one cell deep, The square footage of that would cover the side, would cover a tennis court. That's how much surface area we have in our lungs. And I want to go back to one thing that Season said. It's like we breathe about 25,000 breaths every day. And with each and every one of those inhales that we take, our lungs are exposed to everything in our environment, everything in our air. So whether it's wildfire smoke or emissions from vehicles or air pollution from factories or from cigarettes or from vapes, we're letting those into our lungs when we're out in our environment or if we're smoking or vaping. And the thing that's so tragic about when youth use some of these products is 80% of our lung development happens after we're born. So when you've got youth and teens using these e-cigarettes, they're actually potentially causing irreversible harm in their lungs, and it might stop them from developing into full-sized, healthy lungs. You mentioned efforts to ban menthol cigarettes, and that's happening at the federal level. And we're also working with the coalition folks in Washington State to prohibit the sale of all flavored tobacco products, including menthol cigarettes. The one thing we know, and you and my dad are prime examples, is that when you've got flavored products out there, it makes it more appealing to people. It's easier to start that habit, and it's harder to quit. And then just in the past few years, when we've got these vaping products, you've got the marketing is egregious that these companies are using. You've got Captain Crunch flavored, you've got Fireball flavored, Pina Colada, banana, cotton candy, all sorts of candy flavored tobacco products that are obviously not targeted to you, John, but are targeted to our youth. And we have a youth epidemic of these products. So the one thing that we can do is we can make these products less appealing. I think if both you and my dad never had that mentholated cigarette, maybe you would have never become smokers. And if we can make these products less appealing and and remove that taste from these products, perhaps, and we believe that kids won't be using these products. So that's a piece of legislation that we're going to be working with to try to work with legislators to support it and introduce it during the 2025 session.
Great.
For people who are interested in joining this, you can visit lung.org and sign up for our Lung Action Network. Because, John, I need people like you. I need parents like Season. I need every Washington citizen who is appalled at what's going on in our schools around vape products to care and to let their legislators know. And I know it can seem kind of intimidating, but I think the American Lung Association makes it as easy as possible for people. And what we need is we just need people to tell their story. It's just like the three of us sitting here. We're just having a conversation. We're sharing stories. And these are what elected officials need to hear to understand that there is a breadth and depth of concern about youth vaping in our state, so we can do something about it.
Well, I would say, let me add on to that. Go to the website, ladies and gentlemen. Those of you who are watching and listening out there, it's a great tool that the American Lung Association has. Full color, has it categorized by different subjects areas, and it also says, if you want to get involved, there's a way to do it. So as you say, lung.org, go online to the website. Though I tell people go to the web. Adults, we're visual. We don't. It's easier to be visual, and I think it's a great website. So I appreciate that. Carrie, because that is something that I would ask our listeners, our audience, to support what you guys are doing, as well as other organizations. Well, Season, let me ask you, do you have, I know you use volunteers, right? Can real quickly, give us a little rundown of how somebody gets involved. I used to do work in the elementary school. I used to do finding urban nature. We used to take kids out of the classroom and go out into the woods around the school. But how does somebody get involved as a volunteer?
I'm going to tell you that, John, but I need you to save some time for Carrie because we released a report this week that I'd really like you to talk about that I think is really clearly defining what you all are talking about, that Earth needs more than a week. So I'm going to quickly say people can go to the website, lung.org/events. Everything that's on there are fundraising events, volunteer opportunities, facilitator trainings. If anything I talk to you about tobacco prevention and cessation in youth, we have a adult tobacco prevention and cessation program called Freedom from Smoking. That's exactly what you just said. Go to the website. My phone number and email is there. And I'd be happy to find the exact right place for your listeners to get involved.
Perfect. All right. Take it away, Carrie. They've told me I talk too much. So, hey.
No.
The microphone is all yours. It's all yours.
Perfect. So I want to echo Season's thanks for reminding us that Earth Day, that our planet Earth, this beautiful marble that we live on, should have more than one day. Mm-hmm. And air is a big part of that. Right. And just yesterday, we released our 25th annual State of the Air report. Oh. And what this report aims to do is to put air pollution and a lot of complex data and information into plain everyday language. Okay. We know that air pollution is harmful to human health. It can cause wheezing, coughing, shortness of breath, asthma attacks we've talked about a little bit, worsening COPD, lung cancer, premature death, and the list goes on and on. And what this year's report shows is that 131 million people living in our nation are living in areas with unhealthy levels of air pollution. So nearly 4 in 10 people are living in places with unhealthy air. And what we know are that people of color were 2.3 times as likely as white people to live in a county with 3 failing grades. So there is so much more that we need to do. King County received 2 F grades. We received an F grade for ozone pollution and an F grade for particle pollution. And these 2 pollutants are the most common pollutants in our air. Ozone pollution doesn't come directly from tailpipes, but it happens often in the summer months when you've got nitrogen oxides and volatile organic compounds combined with heat and sunlight, and that creates ozone, which is a molecule with 3 oxygen atoms are in there. Mm-hmm. And when we breathe that in, it causes like a sunburn, like inflammation on our lungs. And it's harmful to absolutely everyone. Particle pollution is the most common pollutant in the Pacific Northwest, in Seattle and Washington State. Okay. And that's when you've got microscopic pieces of soot and gases and other particles suspended in the air. And the dangerous thing about particle pollution, it's 2.5 microns or less in diameter. So when you've got a particle that's small, we can breathe it in. It slips past the respiratory defense system. It goes directly to our lungs, goes through our lungs, through our alveoli. And some of the smaller particles are so small they actually pass through the alveoli into the bloodstream, where it can go throughout the body and cause inflammation and harm. So it's really a huge concern. So we're not only harming adult lungs, but remember when we talked about our kids and how their lungs are still developing, there's a lot of harm happening there as well. One of the big issues that we have to deal with in Washington are the wildfires during the summer months. We know that wildfire seasons are not only longer, they're not only more intense, But the severity that we're seeing are creating more hazardous days. We're seeing more purple days and more maroon days. And when I say purple and maroon, I'm talking about there's a scale called the Air Quality Index, and it's kind of like a yardstick.
Right.
When it's green, it's good air, and then it goes through yellow, orange,
right,
purple. So one of the things we can do to better protect ourselves is to be aware of, to care about our air, be aware of our air. What is the air quality that we're experiencing? There's a website, airnow.gov, that you can go to that tells you the air quality that you have. You can also put an app on your phone. That's one thing I like to check every day. You know, how's my air? You know, on a day when you go outside and it's smoky, that it's poor air. But sometimes there's other things that are going on. And so it's helpful to know what your air quality is. On a real bad day, you don't want to go outside and do strenuous exercise. You want to actually really limit the amount of time that you have outside. One thing that we can do now to prepare for wildfire season is to think ahead. You want to make sure that you have your medications with you. For those who live in that urban wild interface, you might want to pack a go bag in case the fire comes near your home and you need to pick that up and leave. You want to think about creating a safe space in your house. Is there a room on the interior of your house that you can get an air purifier and shut off all the doors? So at least you've got one space in your house that has good, clean, healthy air. As much as we can, we need to move away from burning fossil fuels as a way of fueling our vehicles. So the Lung Association was very excited this session to support dollars to go to electrifying our school bus fleet. The fact that we've got kids traveling in diesel buses is just like all sorts of wrong, right? Diesel is a human carcinogen and it's just not healthy for us. So we were very pleased to support that, as well as other efforts to move away from fossil fuels and electrifying cars, electrifying the ships when they come into port. You know, anything we can do to get off the combustion form of energy is really going to be helpful and really going to pay off in the long run.
It's unfortunate, but we are the consequence of modern living. We are basically the victims of it. The more we became industrialized, producing, etc., the more we realize now we were contaminated. Look at 3 Mile Island. Look at Hanford. Oh my gosh. We can go on and on and on. Look at what happens. Disasters like Fukushima, etc. I mean, these are the things that happen.
And John, we can also be the solution.
Yes.
It's so easy to go down that rabbit hole of doom and gloom, but
I know. I appreciate
when we know better, we can do better. And the technology that we're developing, the clean energy technologies out there, we have cleaner fuels, we can have cleaner cars.
Exactly.
We can do this. But again, people need to show that they care and to get engaged and to do something. And there's so much that we can do together to change policies and to make the world a better place for us and our kids and our grandkids.
I love Al Gore, what he did. He took it on, and now he's dedicated. But God, Carrie, you've inspired me to go get my bike out of the garage and get out and ride that bike. To turn that key on the car. So and I knew you on the site. There's a lot of which I really appreciate. Working with children, working with young people, especially. If I want to, like I said, get involved with that, you have any specific programs that you do with adults working with kids and things like that? And I don't mind even coming and talking about being a former smoker, how I broke the habit. And I'll just share with you. I started coughing one day, and I spit up in blood. And I said, oh my God. And I was smoking. I was in Olympia, so I had to go to emergency. They checked me out and they said, "We don't think it's cancer, but you need to go see an ear nose special, ear nose throat specialist." So I went to my ear. He's a crazy guy, good doctor. He said, "John, the reason why you're bleeding and you cough it up and spit out, you have your tonsils still. Somehow you cut your tonsil because they swell up because you smoke. They enlarge because you smoke." And I remember, and I'm not trying to pump a company, but Tim's Cascade. I had the Tim's Cascade hard potato chip. I swallowed it and I said, "Oh man, that hurt." That's what did it. And that day, I came home from Olympia, grabbed that pack of Salem 100s. Not only the short ones, I was smoking the 100s. That was bad too. Threw it in the fireplace, and that was it. But I would love to share that story because it does take in most cases, we know the psychology is there's something traumatic happens to some people that makes them change their habit. That makes them really change what they're doing. And it was going to have to be something like that for me.
Well, John, I would recommend for all of you prior smokers to visit one more website. So we have an initiative called Saved by the Scan. And we know that lung cancer is the highest mortality rate in men and women of any cancer. So lung cancer kills more people than breast cancer, colon cancer, or prostate cancer.
Wow.
And we know that only 15% of the qualified people to get lung cancer screening get screened. So I like to say where we're at with lung cancer is where breast cancer was before mammography. We don't have a general population screen. We have a high-risk population screening. But John, I would suggest that you visit savedbythescan.org and take a very quick questionnaire.
Sure.
And if you are in that risk group, if you are in that high risk group, advocating to your healthcare professional for a CT scan. And they're by Medicaid and they're covered by insurance, but it's vitally important for this generation that is for your generation, John.
I know.
That grew up smoking. That was the marketing plan of what was happening at the time. I grew up in a situation.
We were cool. We were so cool. We had that cigarette in our.
I grew up post Joe Camel, right?
Oh yeah, right.
I grew up post Joe Camel. So the generation that grew up with that mentality needs to advocate for their health. If you are a prior smoker, congratulations for stopping the addiction, but you need to advocate for yourself in order to be screened for lung cancer.
We are out of time. Doggone it. Season and Carrie, man, this is so important. We're going to come back and do it outside of Earth Deserves More Than a Day because, again, like I said, you've been on my show before, on my show. Hey, Season, Carrie, my pleasure. Thank you very much for sharing with us such important information. Go to their website, lung.org, correct? And do it. Ladies and gentlemen, you will be amazed at the stuff American Lung Association is doing. Again, Season and Carrie, my pleasure meeting you, Carrie. And Season, as always, thank you very much. Hey, stay tuned for the next Got Winds of Change coming up. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Earth deserves more than a day. All the way. Stay tuned.